Hello everyone, my name is Lowko, and today it is time for a professional match of Zerg versus Protoss. Spawning here in the southeast corner of Port Alexander Alley and playing with the red Protoss probes. He's one of the very strongest Protoss players in the world, and yes, I know that some of you in the comment section give me a hard time whenever I say that a player is amongst the very best in their respective race, but it's true guys, we have none other than Hero. And his opponent spawning in the opposite corner. I hate to break it to you, but his opponent is also one of the very strongest players on the planet right now. We are currently looking inside of the main base of Dark. So look, I will admit that in the past, I used to be a little more liberal, I suppose, with calling players some of the very best in the world. I mean, my thought process in the past was that, well, if a player is like top 50 on the planet, and there's like 2 million people playing the ladder every single season, that must mean they're amongst the very best, right? And I still actually think that that statement is true. However, I have been scaling it back a little, because at some point it felt like pretty much every single pro gamer I was casting was amongst the very best in the world. But honestly, these two players right here are certainly some of the very best that we have right now. So Dark, I would consider him probably the rank 2 Zerg at this point. I think he's just a little below Serral. If you were to ask Dark, he'd definitely say that he is the very best Zerg in the world. But I think it's like Serral first and then either Dark, Rogue, or Sue second. But I'm gonna say Dark. I think Dark, I mean, he recently played in the GSL Code S in the round of 32 and he looked extremely solid. He looked very dominant. So I'm definitely gonna call Dark to be the second best Zerg right now. Likewise, Hero actually also advanced to the round of 16 in the GSL Code S. He also showed some stellar games in the round of 32. A little more shaky. He had to play against Scarlet, who ended up getting defeated there. Sadly, I'm not gonna lie, I was cheering myself for Scarlet in that game. But there's no denying that Hero is still a top-level Protoss as well. So when it comes to Protoss players, it's always a little harder to say. I mean, whenever you talk about best players in the world, I mean, that list always changes. But I'm gonna say it's probably players like, for example, Hero, Showtime, SOS, Zest, Neep, Classic. I mean, that's like 5 or 6 Protoss players that I just named off that are amongst the very best in the world. And Hero is definitely at that same skill level. So I think it's fair to say, right? If a player is like top 10 in their respective race, I think I can call them some of the very best that we have in StarCraft right now, right? Is that fair? Anyways, let's see where this game is going to take us. I've been casting a lot of the top-level Korean games lately, and I have to say, I've been really enjoying it. We've seen some subtle shifts in the meta, in particular in the Terran versus Zerg matchup. For example, yesterday I uploaded a game where Teja ended up going Mass Battlecruiser as a switch. I mean, that's a not-so-subtle change, I suppose, in the meta, but in case you haven't watched that game, I'll leave a link to it down below in the description of this video, because it was a good one. It's one of the best games I've seen recently. That was super sick. Anyhow, we see a bunch of Zerglings right now coming out for Dark. He actually produced a little more than you normally do at this point in the game. There is already that Adepto holding the door here. Maybe he was expecting that it was just gonna be this one Stalker. At this point, he doesn't see it, although the Stalker is basically staring him down. The Phoenix right now also is going to be able to kill that Overlord here just fine. And even though the Zerglings, I think, were looking at brute forcing their way through this Stalker or Adept, the two of them together, they are a match made in heaven. They will be able to hold the door just fine. Now, I love this. Okay, so second Phoenix has already been produced here by Hero, and we now also see a double Stargate. I think this is my personal favorite build right now in Protoss versus Zerg. I think it's the very strongest one. I mean, obviously we have the standard Phoenix, Oracle into third base into Archon drops, which is certainly very strong as well, but I've become a big fan of the mass Phoenix style. Here's the thing. Phoenixes, when you mass them, are almost always guaranteed to deal damage as long as your control is good. They are a unit that very much so reward the skill of the player that's playing them. So if you go mass Phoenix, right, the best response Zerg has is going Queens, then going for maybe a bunch of Spore Crawlers as well, and eventually Hydras, maybe Corruptors, right? However, it takes a while before you get that defense solidly in place. And while that's all going on, Protoss can pick up so many of those worker kills and so many overlords and whatnot with ease. Now, even though there was a Phoenix opener right here, Dark still ended up getting an overlord across right now who will now scout out exactly what's going on. That's actually quite important there because he's immediately going to be able to add on additional spore crawlers here, and he's also going to be able to make additional queens. So I think actually Dark is going to be in a pretty good spot. Okay, so Dark is basically as prepared as can be, right? Now I'm hoping that I'm right. Currently, he has not really lost a whole lot just yet. We'll see where this game is going to take us, because most of the time, whenever a Zerg player seems to be super prepared against Mass Phoenix, they still end up losing so much. Now, I love that. Great interception there by our Zerg player. Ends up getting one of those rallied Phoenixes for pretty much free. Although a couple Overlords right there, as well as a couple drones, were picked off as well. If I'm not mistaken, though, yeah, there's no Oracle in this game. So normally, we see this third Nexus going up right around the 5-minute mark or so. This is already a purposefully delayed expansion here for Protoss. So Hero is definitely looking to deal the damage right here. That's a lot of queens though, but this amount of queens, you can't really go ahead and pick them up very easily either. Great zoning so far by Dark though, not gonna lie. There you go. He does get himself at least one of those queens though. The one that was just simply walking around. Another one of those overlords coming up, and eventually the third Nexus will be created. Now, a lot of Zerglings here are currently running towards their deaths. I think that's because our Zerg here is busy microing against these Phoenixes. But it did just scout out that the third Nexus indeed was created, and I think that everything is looking a-okay right now. We see a follow-up right now with a Twilight Council robotics facility also being constructed. So after about 10 Phoenixes or so here in total, Hero has decided it is time to transition. How many workers has he killed so far? 7. That's actually manageable. So the counter to this kind of style, if you're a Zerg player, since Phoenixes can't lift up buildings or whatever, and they can't really like force the end of the game anytime soon, the counter to Phoenixes is usually just over making drones. You just anticipate you losing workers and you just make a lot more, and because of the way that Zerg can birth a lot of units, usually it's pretty easy to still stay up to date, but you're pretty much always gonna lose at least a couple workers against Mass Phoenix. At the very least, as long as your opponent is good. Now, I love this as well. Do you see that? This is the subtle changes that I'm talking about. Hero chases down those Zerglings with a bunch of sentries as well as a bunch of zealots and well, I guess one adept and one stalker, right? The match made in heaven that we saw earlier. However, since he knew that his opponent scouted it, because Dark is super good, he scouted out immediately that this army was moving out, he decided to go back because he already forced the damage by forcing out roaches. Whenever a Zerg player at this point in the game is making roaches, it means they're not making drones, right? And you can see it right now in the worker count. 65 versus 54 workers. And what are you gonna do with these roaches right now? Since there's a lot of Phoenixes out, nothing. You're not gonna be able to do anything with these roaches. I mean, these Phoenixes are just gonna lift them up if you were to move across the map, so that's what I like about Phoenixes. You're guaranteed to deal damage, you can deal a lot of, or you can get a lot of scouting information as well. You're forcing certain units out, so it's almost going to be always Corruptors or Hydras. Initially, a lot of additional Queens that aren't going to be too useful. And really, Zerg doesn't want to move out until they are close to maxing out, unless with like Zergling Baneling or something. But they don't really want to move out just because the Phoenixes are going to be super good when it comes to picking up those workers as well. And all of the attacking units. So I think of, well, when we speak of picking up workers, Hero, he's got the killer instinct, picks up a bunch more. Okay, so even though Dark was prepared, how many workers were killed here? 21 drones. 21 drones! And 3 queens and 5 overlords. Look at the resources lost at this point. That's why I love Mass Phoenix openers as Protoss, okay? It's just so strong. It forces the Zerg into certain positions. You almost always deal damage. You get the scouting info. It's just pretty much as good as it gets. Now, it is a little more vulnerable against some early game builds. But even if, like, say, for example, Zerg would go for, like, a heavy roach-based push, right? Since you already have the double Stargate out anyway, you can just quickly make a couple Void Rays and still be fine. Plus, in the late game... Okay, I'll stop fanboying after this, okay? My last point as to why I like Mass Stargate. In the late game, you can go ahead and use these Stargates as well to start producing Tempests as well as Carriers a little bit easier, because you already have the Stargates invested in. Super good stuff, right? I like it a lot. Anyhow, right now in the grand scheme of things though, Dark knows that he's got a little bit of breathing room. He has been producing a lot of workers as well. He's currently up to 82 of them. And it really is still looking very good here for our purple Zerg. Even though he has lost a lot and he's going to lose a lot more, there's no denying that he still has a very healthy economy and he can start building up his dream unit composition here in just a little bit. I do think there was a bit of, I think that must have been like a Baneling attempt over here. I did not quite catch that, but it doesn't really matter too much because I don't think anything critical was really killed there now. Only 2 sentries going down there. And already we actually have that 4th Nexus coming up. Look at the amount of structures right now. 2 Archons right here as well, trying to prevent any Zerglings from just simply killing all of this. Well, I think that hero, he's just secured himself another base. Apparently though, if your first couple of Banelings don't manage to get the damage in, what about additional 20 or so of them? What about you just get a whole bunch more and you just roly-poly your way in there? The Banelings are looking to connect. Excellent response there, though, by Hero. The Immortals immediately step up to the job, right? They are immediately ready to take some of the hits there. And so far, Hero is not really taking any damage. We see Zerglings right now running towards the natural. Okay, this is nice. This is very, very good right here for our Protoss. He has not quite responded to this just yet, although he does have a lot of gateways. So in the main base, he's probably going to be fine. But in the natural, he is currently losing quite a lot of those probes here as well. Storm right there on the own probes. I don't know if that's the best way of going about it. Is there any detection here? Yep, that one observer comes up as well, although a couple links do still remain. But as long as this photon cannon finishes, I think he's gonna be fine. Yeah, we see the burrowed links pretty much everywhere. Hero finally taking a little bit of damage here as well, but I think that this is gonna be just fine. 7 probes, though, go down there in the grand scheme of things. But the most important part right now is that Hero is up to 4 bases. He's got himself 4 Nexi, he's got himself 8 gas geysers, and that's where you want to be. That's when you can go up to that maxed out Protoss army that is so very scary to deal with. And immediately, look at the double Stargate, guys. They're producing a lot of Tempest. Okay, now, Dark, he knows that this is going to be a Stargate switch. He knows he's going up against a lot of Protoss. He has decided to go for the swarm composition, right? So he's going Mass Ling, Mass Baneling, and right now he's adding on Ultralisk. He knows the Tempests are going to be produced here, but hold that thought because we see so many of those probes going down there. Ooh, you blink once, all of a sudden your worker line is gone. Dark decides to just try and swarm over his opponent, and he is playing hyper aggressively against someone who's going into a Tempest and I guess late game Protoss unit composition. So we see Ultralisk now coming up. Ultralisk to counter Tempest. I don't know if that really works. Usually, Ultras are really, really bad against Tempest, okay? The thing is, or not, well, I mean, against Tempest, obviously they're really bad, right? But the thing is, usually against Protoss, we don't really see any Ultralisk play because of the fact that, well, they've got Immortals, they've got Archons, they've got, you know, Void Rays, Tempest, like, even Zealots. Even Zealots are good against Ultras, okay? So normally we don't see Ultralisk, but we did recently have this new addition right here. This new upgrade in the Ultralisk Cavern that allows the Ultras to be 20% faster off creep. It's a pretty cheap upgrade. It's a pretty quick upgrade as well. And I guess considering he has been getting himself an armor upgrade right here as well, these Ultras are going to be extremely tanky. Dude, I love this. So, wait. Rather than countering the unit composition right now, we just simply see Dark throwing mass units at his opponent. Right now, going for an Overlord drop inside of the main base, running around with Zerglings. The mothership, by the way, is out, but this is just simply Zerg trying to brute force his way into the victory. I mean, who tries countering Tempest and Mass Stargate with Ultras? How is he going to deal with this army, though? That's what I'm worried about right now. He's dealing a lot of damage, right? He's picking up a lot of workers. He's forcing this Protoss player to stay at home. But how is he planning on actually shutting down this late-game Protoss army? There are a couple Corruptors right now being produced, but look at the amount of Ultras here. These Ultras are probably gonna go after this base, I reckon. I have never actually seen Ultras in like a year in Protoss versus Zerg, just because they're terrible on paper. Well, there we go. Chomp, chomp, chomp. There's still these Immortals left over, though, and it will force at least these Ultras back, but they did get at least a couple kills right there on some of those, what are they called? Photon cannons. Zerglings still in the main base, these Dropper Lords being an absolute pain in the butt. constantly bringing over Zerglings. But how are you gonna deal with this army? That's what I'm most curious about right now. How are you gonna kill these Tempests? How many Corruptors are there right now in total? It's 8 at this point. We see a couple more spawning, if I'm not mistaken. Ultras are moving in right now, though. Look at the amount of Zerglings here. Obviously, Ultras don't really care so much about Psionic Storm. They're going to be able to make short work of that. Ultras actually are cleaning up the majority of those units on the ground, and that means that only the air units remain. Since indeed, since indeed the Ultras basically take the High Templar out of the equation, it means that all of a sudden these Corruptors, as well as the Hydras, I suppose, and the Queens and stuff, they have a much easier time moving across. Does he even have any Hydras? No, I'm just autopiloting into Hydras because that's what everyone does. This is a different response than what we normally see in this matchup. This is actually really cool. Who the heck goes Ultras to counter mass Stargate? How does that make any sense? The Queens from earlier, the ones that were meant to defend against the Phoenixes, they are feeling brave enough to move forward. The Ultras ended up killing the Nexus right there in the center. More Lings and Banes are moving across, and slowly but surely, so many of these Stargate units are being picked off by the Queens. Reinforcing Corruptors right now, being a nuisance here as well. I think he's probably planning on just making a ton of those at some point once he shuts down this Protoss economy and then just clean up whatever is left over? Is that the plan right now? He could also add on, I guess, more Queens. Yeah, we see Vipers right now coming up as well. Dude, I don't think I've actually seen Ultras in Protoss vs Zerg in about a year or so. There was a time where we saw Ultras as a counter to carriers because they can tank interceptors for days. Right now, though, with +3 Carapace here finishing up, these Ultras are going to be extremely tanky. Carriers are actually not going to be a good switch anymore, which means that it's going to be Void Rays and Tempest here that are the name of the game. We see one carrier right now coming up. There might be another one out there somewhere. But somehow, some way, right? Even though that Protoss army was maxed out, not only did Dark manage to hold that, but he got himself a base kill, and he essentially is now forcing Protoss to sit back with just mass Zergling Baneling. What is happening here? Oh man, I'm glad I'm casting this game, okay? Some people may give me a hard time for saying that these players are some of the best in the world, but look, they are. Who the heck sees? Like, I'm still a little flabbergasted. I've lost so many games to mass Skytoss over like the last 5 years, okay? I would never consider going Ultralisk when I know my opponent is investing in units that fly. Apparently, though, if you can swarm well enough, you can go ahead and pick up a lot of those High Templar on the ground, clean up whatever is left over, and then counterattack and kill the base before those flying units can actually kill the rest of the Ultra army. Right now, this is an awkward position right now for Hero. You can almost, like, hear him think right now, right? He's like, well, what do I do? Do I just get another base? Do I max out? Do I try and just simply beat that late game army? I guess that's the plan. That is a healthy amount of Corruptors right now, though. Now that the majority of the Protoss is killed, apparently this is the time where Dark decides to go for mass Corruptor. There are still a lot of Archons here remaining as well. There's also obviously Void Rays. I'm not actually sure what Archons prioritize when they're fighting Ultras. Will they go after the Corruptors or will they go after the Ultras? I'm not entirely sure. Regardless, there we go. Abducts are going to be able to make short work of all of those Tempests. Obviously, that's what we've been seeing for a very long time right now in StarCraft 2, where, you know, the combination of Corruptors as well as Vipers, they're super strong against this Protoss army. And I love the addition right here of a couple Overseers in the same control group just to make feedback a little harder. But look, Hero Ultralisks. Who the heck goes Ultras against Protoss? Alright, so I feel like this is the kind of game, right, where we're looking at it and it looks really cool, and then you try it out in your own games and you feel miserably. That's kind of what I'm feeling right now. I'm looking at this and I feel like I should not give this a try myself because Dark must have scouted something that set him off to go into this tech path. Great Aspire right now coming up, by the way, as well for Dark. But here we go. Hero has maxed out, or at least gotten close to maxed out once again. Parasitic Bomb, though, going after so many of those Void Rays, forcing them to split up. And I think now that Dark has softened up a lot of that Protoss underbelly, he's going to be able to bounce forward and snipe so many of those flying units. All of the Tempests fall. The carriers are gone as well. But still, though, that's a lot of Protoss units that still remain on the ground. Fort Base, once again, was killed. But the Zerglings, as well as the Ultras right now, they're coming up for the reinforcement. And they are smelling blood. If Dark could go ahead and make a bunch of what are they called? Brute Lords right now? I think this would be pretty much game over. But anyways, here come the Zerglings. Ultras will spawn here in just a little bit as well. Archons are being morphed in now that they are out of energy. Ooh, this is still a scary amount of Protoss remaining, but +3/+3 Ultras do not mess around against the gateway-based army. And with all of the Immortals picked off, Dark is actually the one who obtains the victory. That was... I want to go back to that engagement. Should we go back to that engagement where he ended up getting so much value there? Now here's that fight that I really wanted to have a look at. There's a lot of High Templar here. How many are there in total? 11. It's a very, very strong army. There's still some of that supply of Protoss, though, caught up in a bunch of units that aren't out yet. So obviously that adds already to that supply count. But Hero's army still is massive. Now, if you look at this, this is 6 Tempest, 2 Void Rays, a Mothership, and 11 of these Stormy Boys, right? That's a lot of High Templar. When it comes to anti-air, though, it's really only Queens and then a couple Corruptors at this point. And somehow we see Zerg cleaning this up. So it's the Ultras that I suppose zone away against the High Templar. I do think that that was not perfect right there by Hero. Having these High Templar so far in the back, certainly, and like not underneath the Mothership, certainly does make it a lot harder. But those Queens and Corruptors, man, completely shutting down so much of that army. They just simply move across. And even though Tempest, they deal a lot of damage against Ultras, they're preoccupied fighting the couple Corruptors here. And that means the Ultras have free reign to go after the base. And at that point, once the 4th base falls, that's the point where Dark is like, okay, I'm gonna go back. I know that my opponent is not gonna have that much economy here anymore. Well, he tests the water here for a little bit longer, but as soon as he realizes, okay, the Protoss is up with his back against the wall as far as the eco goes, he just simply decides to go back, and that's when he starts producing that late game counter. So I guess that this whole unit composition, right, the Ultra army, was meant to kill the 4th base, prevent Protoss from having that sick economy, and then he starts countering the actual Stargate units. Something that I really have not seen in quite some time. What an awesome game. I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. A special shout out to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for directly helping out this channel. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you once again in the next one.